In this video, we're going to see how to capture an image from the camera on board an Android device and save that image to the SD card. This is for Android 24 and greater when several things changed. Now, as a side note, we will also address how to fix a file URI exposed exception. This is common in a case where you have an existing Android app like this one here, which is the project we're going to use. We choose Take Photo, and all of a sudden we get Plant Places has stopped. And indeed, there are several things that can cause that to happen. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this in the debugger with a breakpoint. So I choose Take Photo, and we see that we go to the button handler for that Take Photo. I press F8 several times to walk through, and all of a sudden I get an invocation target exception when I try to actually draw the intent, when I try to come up with the intent for that image. And if I look very closely at this, and I take a look down at the bottom where my logs are, what we will see is an invocation target exception. So this, let's see if I scroll up just a bit here, let's see if we can find it. And sure enough, I just hit F8 one more time, step one further line, invocation target exception, and we see Android OS file URI exposed exception. So this video is going to cover both scenarios of how to fix that exception and also how to simply save an image from the camera to the SD card from scratch. So I go ahead and choose F9. We see, sure enough, the app is stopped, and there we go. Okay, first I do want to jump right in, but I want to define a few terms first. So what we want to do, take a photo with the camera, use the onboard camera intent, and save it to the SD card. Here's what changed that we're going to address in this video. We need to use something called a file provider, which is something that we define in the Android manifest. That allows us to basically proxy permission to write to the SD card over to the camera app, because the camera that we're invoking is what's actually saving this image to the SD card, and we have to give it permission to do so. Additionally, recent versions of Android contain a newer permission model, where in old versions of Android we put all the permissions that we needed in the Android manifest, and the user had to accept those upon installing our application. In new versions, we need to ask for permission at time of need. So when you go to use the camera, it asks permission to use the camera. Also, it asks permission to write to the SD card. That requires several new methods. One is one called request permission. Also, there's a method called check self permission. And then we have another method called onRequestPermissionResult, and that's a method that's called after the user has either accepted or declined this permission. Permission in our case for the camera or writing to the SD card. Okay, so what we need, a button and a click handler. We have that almost already set up. A place where we want to save the image. An intent, which is going to call the camera with flag grant URI permissions to say we want the camera to be able to save the image to a URI. We need to make some changes to the Android manifest. We need some camera permissions with the new permission model. And we need an XML file with the path where we want to save the image. A lot of stuff, I know that, don't worry. We'll take a look at it one step at a time. So, okay, first of all, creating a file provider in the Android manifest. This is probably the trickiest part because it's a little tricky to explain, but we can just do this kind of boilerplate. So let's jump right into our Android environment here, and I'm going to double shift, and I'm going to say Android manifest, okay, and Android manifest, just a moment, and we'll take this into presentation mode so we can see it in high definition. Okay, getting a little bit closer, so we just need to create our provider. So our provider is what gives us the ability to get the permission, pass the permission to save this image to the SD card, and pass that permission over to the camera. A whole lot of text here. I'll warn you about that. Not all of it will make great sense, but we'll go ahead and fill it in as we want. First, Android authorities. Okay, this is probably the trickiest of all. It typically is our package name followed by .provider. So for our package name, we can go up to the top of this class. This will work just fine. In my case, this is the package name that I want to use. Yours might be different, but this is essentially the unique identifier of our application to the Google Play Store. So we go with that package name, we add .provider on the end. Now name, this one is kind of a static name as opposed to the authorities, where your authorities package might be different from mine. The name that you use for Android name here will likely be the same. We simply say what type of provider we want, which is android.support.v4.content.file.provider. A whole lot of typing again, I know, very easy to mistype that. Now we're going to say Android exported equals false, okay, and Android grant URI permissions, let's go ahead and autocomplete that, equals true, okay, and we will close off the open tag, it gives us a close tag, and now I'm going to say metadata Android name equals double quote, and then Android support.file provider paths. Android.resource equals double quote @ Now the problem is, by the way, we have not yet made this resource. We will do that in our next step. So we're referring to an XML file that does not yet exist. So oops, went a little too far there. So Android resource, and let me just arrow over, @ XML, and then we're going to refer to an XML file called file paths, just like so. Now I know probably right now you're thinking, gosh, this is a lot of typing. And you are correct, and unfortunately there's even more that we need to do. Oh, that should be Android resource. There's even more that we need to do, but I will put this up on GitHub, and you're welcome to copy and paste this, use your own application. Just be sure to switch that authorities, because mine is not going to match what yours is. Okay, now the resource. The resource is an XML file which identifies where we can save our photo. So it's turning red right now because it doesn't know what this file paths is. Let's go ahead and save after I just give this a nice visual and make sure this is what I want to do. Make sure I haven't miskeyed. Now I'm going to drop out of presentation mode. Just a moment. Unfortunately, I love presentation mode. It just takes a moment to switch. Okay, exit presentation mode. Okay, now I'm going to go to my project, and I'm going to go to Res, and I need to make an XML file. I need that XML file to be under the XML directory. Now you notice I don't have an XML directory. No problem. I say new, directory is fine, and we simply call it XML, and that's where I'm going to store my XML files. Within that, I need a file called file_paths that matches just what I have here, but additionally we need a .xml extension. So just a normal old file will be fine. So I'm going to say new file, and I'm going to say file_paths.xml, and I choose OK. Okay, sure, we'll add it to Git, that way I can share it with you. Okay, so for this we'll do just a little okay. How about we do a XML version equals 1.0, and then encoding equals UTF-8 and question mark. So the normal header that we start an XML file with, nothing crazy going on there. Okay, after this we say paths. Okay, and XML and S, Android, okay, equals, and HTTP:// there we go. Schemas, Android COM, APK res, Android perfect. Once again, if you don't want to type all this, you're more than welcome to just copy what I have from GitHub. I'll put the GitHub link in the video. Okay, external path, we'll say name, my images, and then path is just going to be the directory that we're in, which is going to be a plus, and then we simply terminate this tag. Okay, deep breath. I know that's a lot of typing, but the heavy lifting is over. A lot of what we're seeing so far is boilerplate. What we're going to do is, in the search by color screen, I'm going to activate this button called Take New Photo. I'm going to have that button toggle the camera, use this file provider to save the image to a directory. So let's do that. So I'll take a look at I'll go ahead and save my work, take a look at my activity color capture, and I want to take a look at this button as soon as it renders. Zoom up so you can see that in a bit higher def. So take new photo. What we need to do is we need to add an on-click, and that on-click property says what method will be called when we press the button. So on take photo clicked. We don't want to do any spaces or anything because this has to be a legal Java method name. So on take photo clicked. Now I go to color capture activity, which is the class that has all the event handling logic for that color capture screen. Here where I have a place for a method, I'm going to simply choose, I'll type public, void, and then paste. So I make sure I don't have a typo, and then view, v, open curly, close curly, and this is the handler for my button click. Now I'm ready to put some logic in there to call the camera. Now this is a good starting point because this method with that naming convention will be called when we press the button. But we don't want to put all of our camera invoking logic in this button click handler method. Why not? Because we might want to call it from other event handlers too, like shaking the phone or sliding or something like that. And we don't want a button click handler method that's hundreds of lines long. So we'll remember this, but we need to add a few more methods first. First, I'm going to make a method. I can make this one private because I'm not calling it from outside. So private void, invoke camera. Okay, open and close curly, open and close paren, open and close curly. Okay, deep breath. Get a file reference or file name if you want. Okay, and here I'm going to say file provider. Remember that guy? File provider dot get URI for file. Okay, the first thing we need is a context, so I'm going to put in this. The next thing we need is an authority, so I'm going to say get application context, and then .get package name. Okay, what's that going to return, by the way? Just a quick reminder on what that's going to return. Android manifest. Remember how we have that package name at the top? And that's the same package name I put down here. It's going to return this, what we see right here. So let's continue. As a matter of fact, I know I'm going to be here for a while, so we'll go to presentation mode. So this get application context .get package name. And after that, just one moment. Okay, after that we need to put .provider. So we need to make this match exactly, we need to, so we'll do a little concatenation here. We need to make this match exactly what we called our file provider, that name we gave to our file provider in our Android manifest. Next, we need an image file. So I'm going to call a method create image file. I'm going to invoke a method here that I have not yet created. No worries, Alt-Enter, create method. There we go. Now we have a method signature where we can stub out a file name. Okay, so I know a lot of things going on here. One thing, this used to be one of the easiest examples I did in the classroom. It's gotten more and more complicated as time has gone by as we have this file provider, the new permissions model. So I beg your forgiveness in advance. I know this video will go a little bit longer than most of my videos, but I do want to get this all captured in one video. Okay, create image file. I'm going to say file, pictures directory, and just remember where we are. This method is getting called as the very last argument of the file provider get URI for file above. I told you we'd probably do this in a whole series of methods. So let's do it a different way. I'm going to say environment .get external storage public directory. So this means the shared directory which all of our apps can access, and I'll say environment .directory pictures and terminate with a semicolon. So I'm saying I want to get the pictures directory that all apps can access. I want to store this into a variable, so Control-Alt-V, and we will call this, we'll just keep it simple and call it pictures directory. So pictures directory like so. Okay, now we need a way, that's just the directory. We also need a way to make the picture name unique. A good way to do that is with timestamp. So timestamp makes pictures, makes unique name. And I'll go ahead and add a comment up above that says the public picture directory. Okay, so timestamp makes a unique file name. So simple date format SDF equals new simple date format, and then I give it a pattern which is year, four digits for year, 2 for month, 2 for day, underscore, hour, minute, second. Okay, so unique timestamp. And then I need to create the timestamp, so I'll say sdf.format, and then new date, which takes the current date and time and just stuffs that into the timestamp. Alt-Enter, and we want the one in Java util. Control-Alt-V, save this to a variable. That variable we call timestamp. Okay, excellent. Now, let's put together the directory and the timestamp to make a unique image location. And here we'll say file, image file, equals new file, and we'll go ahead and use our pictures directory from line 56, so pictures directory, and then we'll give it a file name. Maybe we'll just say picture in quotes, and then plus our timestamp, and then plus JPG to finish this guy off, plus JPG in quotes, and there we go. So we have a new file name. And now we simply return this image file. So a bit of work, no doubt about that, a bit of work, but at this point we have a full URI for our file using that file provider pattern and this timestamp that's going to give us a unique picture. So we're getting a little bit better. Still a bit more work to do, I won't lie, still a bit more to do. Let's take this get URI from file from our invoke camera method, Control-Alt-V, save that to a variable called picture URI because we're going to need to pass this to our camera. So now we need to get our camera. So intent equals new intent. This is an implicit intent, which means we pass just a string, which in this case is held in a constant called media store, and then action image capture. So that's simply a string that says we wish to invoke the camera. Okay, now tell the camera where to save the image, or spelled correctly, image. Okay, and so I say intent dot put extra. Okay, media store, and then extra output, comma, and then our picture URI. Okay, there we go. So we're just saying we want to save the picture at this location. Okay, tell the camera to request write permission. Okay, intent dot set flags. Okay, and then we'll say intent dot flag grant write URI permission. Okay, oops, sorry, I think I did a page down there. There we go. Flag grant write URI permission. Okay, and then start activity for result and intent. That's the one that we do get is a bit of a freebie. So intent, and then I'm going to give this a unique number. It doesn't matter. We can say 228, like so. Just any old unique number is fine. This one we get as a bit of a freebie. Start activity for result reminds me of the old days of watching The Price is Right. To get tickets to The Price is Right or any game show, you had to send in a self-addressed stamped envelope to some address in Burbank, California. They'd open your mail, find your self-addressed stamped envelope, which was a stamped envelope with your home address on it, put the tickets in that self-addressed stamped envelope, and then mail the tickets back to you. That's what's going on here. We are sending a self-addressed stamped envelope, and that's going to be received on the other end by this method called onActivityResult. Now, we really don't, in this case, we really don't need to do much in onActivityResult because the camera's doing all the work. So we do need to do a start activity for result, but there's no handling we need to do on the other side in onActivityResult. Other times we use the camera, we do, or other times we use the image gallery, we do. Not going to worry about it this time. One thing I do want to tidy up, though, is I have a magic number here. So if I take a look at my image, you see I just put in that number 228, just a some odd random number. That doesn't make sense to somebody reading this code, so it's best that I Control-Alt-C and I extract this into a constant. The advantage being I can give a constant a name that's more descriptive. So I can say camera request code, something like that. Makes a little more sense. It's a lot more readable than 228. Also, it's easy to do a reference search on this. Okay, deep breath. I wish I could say we're done. There's still more to go. In the onTakePhotoClicked method, which is what happens when we press our button, we need to see if we already have permission to access the camera and to write to the SD card. So I say if, and then I say check self-permission, and then I say manifest.permission dot camera. So do we already have this permission? Then I say package manager equal package manager dot permission granted. Now note that camera is showing up red. I do need to adjust and import just slightly. Up at the top I'm going to say import Android dot manifest. There we go. And that should take care of my red constant that I have here. We'll just do 1 second. There we go. Sure enough, now it knows what camera is. Okay, so we're saying, have we been granted permission to use the camera? But additionally, we also need to check, and have we been given permission? Check self permission. Android, or let's say manifest dot permission. One more. Write external storage. Do we have write external storage permission? So once again, package manager dot permission granted, like so. If we've done this, hey, guess what? We don't need to ask the user again, and then we're off to the rodeo, invoke camera. But if not, we must ask the user for this permission. So one thing I should do I'm not doing here. I'm bundling these both together, and I'm saying, I'm assuming that the user has either given us permission to both or not given us permission to both. Probably I should break that into two different if tests, but for sake of convenience, we'll put it in one. Okay, if we have not asked the user or the user has not granted us permission, let's request permission. So what I'm going to say then is I'm going to say string, capital S, open and close square brackets to indicate an array, permission request equals, and then we're going to do a little shortcut here to make a string array inline. Manifest, permission, camera, comma, manifest, permission, and then write external storage, and then terminate with the semicolon. So just which are the permissions that we want to request? Then we say request permissions. Okay, and we pass in our permission request object, and after that we have a request code. Now what's a request code? Remember our self-addressed stamped envelope? Same thing going on here. What this is actually going to do is it's going to bring up a kind of like a dialog box to the user and say, do you want to grant camera permission? Do you want to grant write external storage permission? The user's going to choose accept or decline, and then it's going to call another method which tells us whether the user accepted or declined. So just like before when we had a self-addressed stamped envelope, we need another number. Let's go with 4192. If you are a Reds fan or you're from Cincinnati as I am, you probably recognize that number. If not, Google it, and you'll find out what it is. So 4192 request permissions, and that's our fingerprint that we're going to use when we're now sending across our self-addressed stamped envelope. We're asking the user for these permissions. On the flip side now, we're going to receive the self-addressed stamped envelope with the tickets to the prices right inside, and let's handle that now. So user has selected accept or decline, and we're going to find out what the user has accepted when we come to a new method called on. Whoops, 1 second. We come to a new method called on request permission result. I start typing, and Android Studio is smart enough to fill in the blanks for me and kind of give me a little stub to work with. So I'll say if request code equal. Well, there's our 4192. Why don't we go ahead and Control-Alt-C and make a constant out of that? So we can call this one camera permission request code. As much as I like 4192, it's not as readable as camera permission request code. So we're opening up the envelope. Did we hear from camera permission request code? If we did, we have heard back from our request for a camera and write external storage. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at the method signature that we have here. The request code, that's our self-addressed stamped envelope. The permissions, those are the permissions that we sent in when we were asking the user for permissions up on line 59. So we get a copy of those back. After that, we get grant result. That's an indicator of Did the user say, yes, I'm going to grant that permission, or no, I'm going to deny that permission? So at this point, we know what choice the user has made, and we just need to put some more together, some more comparisons. So if grant results, now remember this is an array, so we're going to go with array index 0, which is the first array index. If grant results 0 equals package manager dot permission granted, okay, and grant results, and this time we'll say 1 equal package manager, okay, and permission granted. I'm not really keen on the way they did this because I don't find that very readable, but what this is doing is it's saying, did we get permission for the first item? Did we get permission for the second item? If we did, guess what? We have what we need to invoke camera. If we did not, well, the user didn't give us permission, so we probably want to make some kind of message and say, hey, I can't open the camera without permission. So toast.makeText, this comma, I cannot use the camera without permission. Okay, and then toast.lengthLong, and then we'll finally terminate this with .show, and terminate with, open and close paren, terminate with a semicolon. Okay, one more deep breath. Well, first of all, let's Control-1 this guy, or no, sorry, I'm thinking Eclipse. Let's, no. Let's Alt-Enter this guy, and let's say extract string resource, and okay. Oh, come on. String resource name cannot open camera. We never want to put strings hard-coded into our source code because then that makes internationalization much harder. Much easier if we extract it out into strings XML. I'll go ahead and save. Okay, so deep breath. We are now finished programming, hopefully, with one big risk, and that is I've done a lot of typing, and hopefully I didn't mess anything up. You never know. So I'll snap a few breakpoints. I do remember one more thing I need to do before we get going, and that is I still have to request these permissions in the manifest old school style. So use this permission, write external storage. Let me go ahead and put this in here, and use this permission, and we'll say camera. So we'll go ahead and put them in the manifest. Good for backward compatibility. I found it kind of was a little tricky if I didn't do it that way. Okay, save. And now I will deploy to the emulator. Now the emulator's up. Let's see if I missed a step. I hit Take New Photo, and we're on the On Take Photo click. Now remember this part. We're saying, have we already been granted this permission? And I choose F8. I'm expecting that no, we have not been granted this permission. So I choose F8, and sure enough, look where it goes. It goes to the else part, and now it's putting together the permission request. Just a quick look. Remember what the screen looks like now. Let me go ahead and choose F9 to tell that to proceed. And take a look. Do you see now it's prompting me for permission? Notice one of two because I'm asking for 2 permissions. So allow plant places, whatever my app name is, to take pictures and record video? Yes. Allow plant places to access photos, media, and files on your device? Yes. Now we come back, remember our self-addressed stamped envelope. Here we are on the other side of that equation where we say, did the user grant the permission? Okay, so are we hearing back from the camera permission request? Yes. Did the user grant our permission for both the camera and writing external storage? Yes. Okay, and now let's go ahead and invoke the camera, F7 to step into this. Okay, long file going on, or long thing going on here, but F8 will take us down where we see we're creating our image in our image file with the current timestamp. And let's see if we can get a look at this timestamp. I'm recording this on March 1st of 2018, so sure enough, March 1st of 2018, Eastern Standard Time. It's a little bit off. My clock is a little bit off there, but nonetheless, yeah, that's close enough. So get our timestamp, make a file with that timestamp, and return this full. It's probably a little tricky to see on the video, but storage emulated 0 pictures, then picture 2018, March 1st, 0301, 2211, so 10, 11, and 53 seconds in the evening, Eastern Standard Time. So F8, and this is where I get really nervous because if I hit F8 here and everything works, it means my XML and the Android manifest is set up correctly. If not, it means I made a mistake there. So here's where I hold my breath. And it looks like we're in good shape. So let's go ahead and start our intent. Okay, let's tell it where we want to save our image. Okay, let's say we want to save the image. And finally, let's go ahead and start the camera, and I'll choose F9. I choose F9, we see a little square red box. Okay, here's the other part where I get a little bit nervous. I click on the checkbox. Now, if you have not requested permissions properly, it might freeze at this point when you click on the checkbox. And specifically permissions for writing to the SD card. If you did do your permissions okay, then this should succeed. And I click the check. And right now I feel pretty good because I see the check has gone away and I'm back to my application. If I really wanted to, I could add one more step here, just a confirmation. Probably a good idea if I go ahead and finish that up. At this point, I'm pretty happy because everything's looking pretty good. One thing I do want to talk about before I add that confirmation, if I go to the Android manifest, I mentioned this package that we see here. Make sure that that package matches your application ID and your build.gradle and the app directory as well. I did realize that I had that off, so I had to resynchronize that. That's also what's going to be used to get your file provider. So if you're happy with that, great, you're good, no problem, we're all set. Okay, what I will do, I'll tell you what I'll do. I won't worry too much about doing the confirmation just yet. What I am going to do is return to my home screen and pull up gallery view. It's going to be a little bit tricky because I've been doing this demo several times, but if I go to my gallery view and I go to all pictures, I see there are 58 pictures here. And I do see, it looks like I do see several that have been saved, several with that red box. So it looks like we are in good shape. So one last tidy up then. Let's do that save confirmation. Remember the color capture, one second, we go to our color capture activity. Okay. And remember the invoke camera, it does a start activity for result and it passes in this camera request code. That means it's going to invoke our on activity result. And what I can do here is I can say, okay, I've already had a separate request code here, but what I can do is I can say if request code equal camera request code, just like so. What this means, on activity result means once the camera closes, this method is called. Now what I would normally do, maybe vibrate the phone, maybe change the background color. We really like giving the kind of non-visual symbols of success, just because pop-ups tend to clutter the screen. But for our case, I'll say toast.makeText, and I will say this, comma, and then I'll say image saved. Another reason we don't like putting message boxes is, take a look, I just put a message in English. It's better if we do a vibrate or a color change because those are less words that need to be translated for one. But for two, you can't possibly translate into every language spoken in the world. So that means people who don't speak your native language, if that's English or something else, will still understand that a vibrate or a screen that turns green is an indication of success. So toast, length long, and show, okay, and semicolon, and save. I'm going to do this one a little bit quicker now because we've already seen a lot of it, so I'm going to go ahead and take off my checkboxes and save and redeploy and okay, and let's watch what happens this time around. Okay, the quick view now, I'm not anticipating that it will ask me for permissions because once I've granted those permissions stick with the app until I've uninstalled the app. So take new photo. Okay, it goes right to the camera this time. I click, I check, image saved. So that's a look at the new provider model and also the permissions model in Android 4.0 and greater. Here's a few pictures of where I was simulating this. One thing I enjoy about public transportation is it gives me an opportunity to go in and put together some of these presentations that you see, most of which I've put together either on a bus, a train, or an airplane, and this is me on a bus in Coventry in the United Kingdom working on the presentation that you're seeing here. So that's where this came from. So I hope this was helpful. I know it's long. Trust me, if I could make it shorter, I would. That's just the nature of how we do image capture and saving in Android in the most recent versions. So thank you for your attention. Certainly please leave comments. I do like reading those, and I do certainly respond if I can, time available. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, and keep in touch. Thank you.